Captain Zara Veltan pressed her webbed hand against the cold metal wall of her ship's bridge. Through the large window, she could see the fires burning on her home planet below. Orange flames spread across the beautiful blue and green world, like a disease. Her people were dying down there, and she could do nothing to stop it. The Kalari had always been a peaceful people. For over 3,000 years, they had never fought a war. Their ships were built for exploration and trade, not battle. Their weapons were designed to stun wild animals, not kill enemy soldiers. They believed that all life was sacred and that problems could be solved with words and understanding. But the Vorthak did not care about words or understanding. The enemy ships hung in space like giant metal spears, black and sharp against the stars. They had arrived 3 days ago without warning. No messages, no demands, no chance to talk. They simply began destroying everything they could find. Cities, farms, space stations, merchant ships. Nothing was safe from their weapons. Zara's own ship, the Harmony's Light, was barely holding together. Her crew of 43 had fought bravely, but their weapons were like throwing pebbles at a mountain. The Vorthak war machines were too strong, too fast, too many. "Captain," called her communications officer from across the bridge. His voice was weak and tired. "We're getting reports from the outer colonies. Keelam Station is gone. The mining facility on Yorvak's moon has stopped responding. They're hitting everything at once." Zara closed her eyes for a moment. 3 star systems, over 2 billion Kalari people, all under attack at the same time. The Vorthak had planned this perfectly. They had studied her people, learned their weaknesses, and struck where it would hurt the most. "Captain Veltan," another voice called out. This one belonged to her tactical officer, a young male named Thel Korvani. "The defense fleet is scattered. Most of our ships are damaged or destroyed. The few that remain are trying to evacuate civilians, but the Vorthak keep attacking the refugee ships." Zara opened her eyes and looked at her crew. They were all staring at her, waiting for orders. These were good people, kind people who had never known real violence until 3 days ago. They had families on the planets below. Children, parents, friends, all in danger. She walked slowly to her command chair and sat down. The leather was torn from where a piece of metal had hit it during the last attack. Everything on her ship was broken or breaking. They had maybe an hour of life support left and their engines were failing. "How many of our people have we evacuated?" she asked. "About 50,000 so far," Thel replied. "But there are still millions trapped on the surface. The Vorthak are bombing the evacuation sites. They're not just trying to conquer us, Captain. They want to wipe us out completely." Zara felt something cold and heavy settle in her stomach. She had heard stories about the Vorthak Empire from other species. They were warriors who lived for battle and conquest. They believed that only the strong deserved to survive. To them, peaceful species like the Kalari were nothing more than targets. "What about help from the other civilizations?" she asked. "Has anyone responded to our distress calls?" Her communications officer shook his head sadly. "The Zerani Confederation sent their regrets, but said they cannot risk war with the Vorthak. The Mollusk Federation offered to accept refugees but will not send military aid. The crystal beings of Altair simply did not respond at all." Zara was not surprised. The galaxy was full of species who would rather stay safe than help others. Everyone feared the Vorthak. Everyone except "Captain," the communications officer called again. "I'm picking up something strange. It's a very long-range transmission coming from the outer rim of the galaxy, from a system called Sol." Sul? Zara had never heard of it. "What species lives there?" "According to the Galactic database, they call themselves humans. They're a relatively new species, only made contact with the galaxy about 50 years ago. Their technology level is listed as moderate. Their military power is minor." Zara felt her hope fading. Another small civilization that probably could not help even if they wanted to. But then her officer continued speaking. "Captain, they're not just listening to our distress call, they're responding to it. The message is coming through now." The bridge fell silent as the transmission began to play. The voice that came through the speakers was strong and clear, speaking in perfectly translated Kalari. This is Admiral Lisa Carter of the Terran Space Command, responding to the distress call from the Kalari Republic. We have received your message and understand your situation. You are facing an enemy that seeks to destroy your entire civilization. You have asked for help, and help is what you will receive. Zara leaned forward in her chair. There was something in the human voice that she had never heard before from other species. It was not pity or sympathy, it was anger. Cold, controlled anger. The message continued. We are dispatching a fleet to your location immediately. Our ships may not be the biggest or the most advanced, but I promise you this. We will not let your people die while we draw breath. Humanity has a simple rule. When someone calls for help, we answer. Hold on, Kalari. The storm is coming to your aid. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Zara looked around at her crew. For the first time in 3 days, she saw something other than despair in their eyes. She saw hope. How far away is this Sol system? She asked. About 2 weeks' travel at maximum speed, her navigator replied. 2 weeks. Zara wondered if they had 2 weeks. She wondered if any of them would still be alive when these humans arrived. But for now, it did not matter. Someone had heard their call. Someone was coming. She stood up and walked back to the window. The fires on her planet still burned, and the Vorthak ships still hung in space like vultures. But now there was something else out there in the darkness between the stars. There was hope, moving toward them at faster than light speed. Zara pressed her hand against the window and whispered a prayer to the ancient spirits of her people. Let them be strong enough, she said quietly. Let them be fast enough. Let them be everything we are not. Far away, in a small system on the edge of the galaxy, 12 human warships prepared for the longest jump of their lives. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison stood in the weapon bay of the UES Thunderstrike, watching his crew prepare for war. Around him, Marines checked their rifles while engineers ran final tests on the ship's missile systems. Everyone moved with purpose, but Jake could see the tension in their faces. They were about to jump into a fight against an enemy they had never seen before. The Thunderstrike was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was fast and deadly. Unlike the beautiful curved ships that other species built, human vessels looked like what they were, weapons of war. Sharp angles, thick armor, and guns pointing in every direction. The ship had been built by people who understood that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to destroy what threatens it. Jake walked down the corridor toward the bridge, passing crew members at their stations. Each person he saw was a volunteer. When Admiral Carter had called for ships to answer the Kalari distress signal, more people had volunteered than they had room for. That was how humans were. When someone needed help, they came running. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep of incoming data. Jake took his position at the command chair and looked at the main screen. It showed the star map with their current location and their destination, Kalari Space, where an entire civilization was fighting for its life. Status report, Jake said, to his crew. All systems green, sir, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez. Weapons are loaded and ready, our missile bays are full, and our point defense systems are online. Navigation is locked in, said Ensign Danny Roberts, from the pilot station. We're ready to jump on your command. Jake nodded and opened a communication channel to the rest of the fleet. On his screen appeared the faces of 11 other ship captains, each one commanding a vessel full of humans ready to die for people they had never met. This is Morrison, he said. All ships report ready for jump. One by one, the other captains confirmed their readiness. Captain Susan Hayes of the destroyer UES Lightning, Captain Paul Bennett of the heavy cruiser UES Hammer, Captain Maria Santos of the troop transport UES Guardian. Each ship had its own job to do, but they would all work together as one force. The largest ship in the fleet was the carrier UES Valkyrie, commanded by Admiral Carter herself. Jake could see her on his screen now, sitting in her command chair, with the same calm expression she always wore before a battle. She had fought in 3 wars before this one, and she knew what it meant to lead people into danger, Listen up, everyone, Admiral Carter said, her voice carrying clearly through the communication system. We're about to jump into a situation that none of us have faced before. The Vorthak Empire has been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years. They're bigger than us, they're stronger than us, and they have more ships than us. Jake saw some of his crew members exchange worried looks. He did not blame them. The intelligence reports they had received about the Vorthak were not encouraging. Each Vorthak warrior was twice the size of a human and covered in natural armor. Their ships were built like flying fortresses, designed to take massive damage and keep fighting. But Admiral Carter was not finished talking. However, she continued, the Vorthak have one weakness. They fight like individuals, not like a team. Each warrior wants to prove how brave and strong he is. They charge straight at their enemies because they think that's how battles are won. Jake smiled slightly. That was definitely not how humans fought battles. We're going to show them something they've never seen before, the Admiral said. We're going to fight as one unit. When they expect us to run, we'll stand and fight. When they expect us to fight, we'll disappear and hit them from behind. We're going to use every trick, every tactic, and every advantage we can find, Lieutenant. Rodriguez leaned over to Jake and whispered, Think it'll work, sir? Jake looked at the tactical display showing the Vorthak fleet composition. 67 ships against their 12. Each enemy ship was larger and more heavily armed than anything humanity had built. By every reasonable measure, they were about to attempt the impossible. Rodriguez, he said quietly, humans have been doing impossible things since we first walked upright. We're not going to stop now. Admiral Carter's voice came through the speakers again. I want everyone to remember why we're doing this. 3 days ago, we received a message from people we had never met, asking for help. They didn't offer us money or trade deals or anything else. They just asked us to help them survive. Jake thought about the message they had received. The voice of Captain Velton, desperate and afraid, but still trying to save her people. The rain, reports of cities burning and civilians dying, children who would never grow up if the Vorthak had their way. In 5 minutes, we're going to jump into hell, Admiral Carter continued. The enemy will try to scare us with their size and their weapons. They'll try to make us think we can't win. But I want you to remember something. We're not just fighting for the Kalari. We're fighting for the idea that civilized people don't stand by and watch genocide happen. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. It was the same feeling he had experienced before every battle he had ever fought. It was not fear exactly, but it was close. It was the knowledge that in a few minutes people would start dying, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. All ships, prepare for jump, Admiral Carter ordered. We're going in fast and hard. The Vorthak won't be expecting us, so we'll have surprise on our side for maybe 10 minutes. After that, it's going to be a straight fight. Jake looked around his bridge one more time. His crew was ready, his ship was ready, his weapons were loaded, and his engines were running hot. In 60 seconds, they would tear a hole in space itself and emerge in a battle that would determine the fate of an entire species. 10 seconds to jump, announced Ensign Roberts. Jake gripped the arms of his command chair and thought about the Kalari captain who had sent the distress signal. She was probably looking up at the stars right now, wondering if help was really coming. She was about to find out. Jump, he said. The stars disappeared and 12 human warships dove into the storm. The human fleet burst out of hyperspace like ghosts appearing from nowhere. 12 ships materialized in the middle of the Kalari system, their engines still glowing from the long jump. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the hum of their reactors and the beeping of their sensors. Then Jake Morrison saw what the Vorthak had done to this peaceful world. Kalari Prime hung before them like a wounded animal. Smoke rose from burning cities while debris from destroyed space stations floated in orbit like a graveyard. Vorthak warships moved slowly around the planet, firing their weapons at anything that moved. They were not just conquering, they were destroying everything they could find. My God, whispered Lieutenant Rodriguez from her station. They're not even trying to capture anything. They're just killing everything. Jake felt anger rise in his chest like hot metal. He had seen war before, but this was different. This was not conquest or even revenge. This was murder on a scale that made him sick. "Sir," called Ensign Roberts, "I'm detecting 67 Vorthak vessels in the system. Most of them are concentrated around the planet, but there are patrol groups scattered throughout the area." "What about survivors?" Jake asked. "I'm picking up several Kalari ships trying to evacuate civilians from the surface, but the Vorthak are hunting them down one by one." Jake watched his tactical display as red dots representing enemy ships moved to intercept blue dots that were trying to escape. Even as he watched, one of the blue dots flickered and disappeared. Another Kalari evacuation ship destroyed, along with everyone aboard. Admiral Carter's voice came through the communication system, calm and deadly. "All ships, this is Carter. I want the destroyers to break off and start hitting their patrol groups. Cruisers, you're with me. We're going straight for their bombardment fleet. Morrison, I want you to get between those evacuation ships and the hunters." "Understood, Admiral," Jake replied. He turned to his crew. "You heard her. Roberts, set course for those Kalari refugee ships. Rodriguez, power up all weapons. We're going hunting." The Thunderstrike turned and accelerated toward the fleeing Kalari vessels. Jake could see them on his screen now. Small, delicate ships that looked more like works of art than spacecraft. They were beautiful, but they were also helpless against the massive Vorthak warships chasing them. "Sir," Rodriguez reported, 3 Vorthak heavy cruisers are closing on a group of Kalari transports. The refugees won't make it to hyperspace before the enemy catches them." "Then we better get there first," Jake said. "Roberts, emergency speed. I want every erg of power you can give me." The Thunderstrike shot forward like a missile, its engines burning so hot they left a trail of plasma behind them. Jake felt the acceleration press him back into his chair as his ship raced to intercept the enemy hunters. War Chief Krex Vorthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his warriors destroy the Kalari evacuation fleet. This had been easier than he expected. The peaceful species had no real weapons, no fighting spirit, no honor. They were like insects, numerous, but weak. "War Chief," called his sensor operator, "new contacts have appeared in the system. 12 unknown vessels, moving at high speed toward our positions." Krex looked at his tactical display with mild interest, probably another species trying to evacuate their Kalari allies. It did not matter. His fleet would destroy them just as easily as they had destroyed everything else. "What species?" he asked. "Unknown, War Chief. The ship designs are not in our database. They appear to be primitive. Angular construction, inefficient engine placement, minimal armor." Krex laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Some minor civilization trying to play hero. Signal the hunting packs to destroy them quickly, then return to the main battle." But even as he spoke, Krex noticed something strange about these new ships. They were not running away or trying to negotiate. They were spreading out in formation and moving directly toward his forces. That was unusual. Jake watched the range close between his ship and the Vorthak hunters. 3 enemy cruisers, each one twice the size of his vessel, and covered in weapon ports. According to his intelligence files, each Vorthak ship could probably destroy his vessel in a straight fight. Good thing he was not planning on fighting straight. "Rodriguez, target the lead ship's engine section. I want a full spread of missiles followed by railgun fire. Roberts, as soon as we fire, I want you to cut power to everything except engines and life support. We're going dark." "Sir?" Roberts looked confused. "The Vorthak expect us to stand and fight like heroes," Jake explained. "Instead, we're going to hit them and disappear. Let them wonder where we went while they're trying to put out fires." The Thunderstrike closed to missile range and opened fire. 24 nuclear warheads streaked toward the lead Vorthak ship, followed by a stream of tungsten slugs moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The enemy vessel's shields flared and collapsed under the assault, and explosions bloomed along its hull. Then the Thunderstrike vanished. The human ship cut all power except for the minimum needed to keep moving. No lights, no communications, no active sensors. In the chaos of battle, it became nearly invisible against the black of space. The Vorthak hunters spun around trying to find their attacker. They had never fought an enemy that struck and then disappeared. Their own tactics were simple: close with the enemy and pound them with superior firepower until they surrendered or died. But Jake was not done. While the enemy ships searched for him, he used their own weapons fire as cover to circle around behind them. The thunderstrike emerged from the darkness like a shark, firing into the rear of the second Vorthak ship before disappearing again. "This is impossible," growled the Vorthak commander. "Where are they?" His answer came in the form of more missiles, this time from a completely different direction. The third Vorthak ship staggered as its weapon systems exploded. Now all three enemy vessels were damaged and confused, spinning in circles as they tried to find an opponent who refused to stay in one place. Meanwhile, the Kalari evacuation ships reached hyperspace and jumped to safety. Jake allowed himself a small smile as he watched the refugee vessels disappear. That was the point after all. Not to destroy the enemy, but to save the innocent. The Vorthak could keep their ships. The humans would keep the people. "Sir," Rodriguez reported, "the other human ships are engaging enemy formations throughout the system. Admiral Carter's group has reached the bombardment fleet." Jake looked at his tactical display. Across the Kalari system, human ships were darting between much larger Vorthak vessels like wolves attacking a herd of buffalo. None of the human ships were trying to win a direct confrontation. Instead, they were disrupting enemy formations, protecting civilian vessels and generally making the Vorthak's lives miserable. "Roberts, set course for the next group of refugees," Jake ordered. "Let's see how many people we can save before the Vorthak figure out what we're doing." The thunderstrike turned toward another group of fleeing Kalari ships, leaving 3 confused and damaged Vorthak cruisers behind them. War Chief Krex was about to learn that humans did not fight the way other species fought. They fought to win. The battle for Kalari space had been raging for 2 days, and War Chief Krex Fortol was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. These humans did not fight like any enemy he had ever faced. They were like smoke. Impossible to grasp, impossible to predict, and somehow always where he least expected them. His fleet still outnumbered the humans 3-1, but numbers meant nothing when the enemy refused to stay still long enough to be destroyed. Every time his ships moved to attack, the humans vanished into the dark between the stars. Every time he tried to continue the bombardment of Kalari Prime, human vessels appeared to disrupt his formations. Krex stood on his bridge, staring at the tactical display that showed his scattered forces. Half of his ships were damaged. His carefully planned invasion had become a chaotic mess, and somehow the humans were winning without ever engaging in a proper battle. "War Chief," his communications officer reported, "the humans are broadcasting another message to our fleet." "Put it through," Krex snarled. Admiral Carter's voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfectly translated Vorthak. "War Chief Krex, this is Admiral Lisa Carter of the Terran Fleet. I am offering you one chance to withdraw your forces from Kalari space. Leave now, and we will allow you to depart unharmed. Continue this attack, and we will destroy every ship in your fleet." Krex's rage boiled over. A human female was threatening him. The idea was so ridiculous that he almost laughed. "Open a channel," he ordered. When the connection was established, Krex looked directly into the camera. "Human Admiral, I am War Chief Krex Vortol of the Vorthak Third Fleet. We have conquered 47 worlds and destroyed countless enemies. You have 12 small ships against my 67 warships. You are either very brave or very stupid." Admiral Carter's image appeared on his screen. She was smaller than a Vorthak warrior, with no natural armor and no visible weapons, but her eyes were cold as space itself. "War Chief Krex, let me explain something to you. We did not come here to negotiate. We came here because someone called for help, and humans do not abandon those who need us. Your fleet will leave, or your fleet will be destroyed. Those are your only options." The transmission ended, leaving Krex staring at a blank screen. The raw, human admiral had not even tried to discuss terms or conditions. She had simply stated facts as if the outcome of this battle was already decided. But Krex was a Vorthak warrior. He had never retreated from any battle, and he would not start now. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "We end this now. Full attack. Formation. Find those human vessels and destroy them all." Commander Susan Hayes watched from the bridge of her ship as the Vorthak fleet began to move into attack formation. The enemy was finally doing what the humans had been waiting for, abandoning their scattered positions and grouping together for a massive assault. "Admiral," she reported over the communication channel, "the Vorthak are forming up for a full fleet engagement. All their ships are moving toward our position." "Perfect," Admiral Carter replied. "All ships, execute Plan Omega. Hayes, your team knows what to do." Susan smiled grimly. Plan Omega was something the humans had developed specifically for this moment. The Vorthak expected a traditional space battle, two fleets lined up against each other, trading fire until one side was destroyed. But humans had learned long ago that the best way to win a fight was to change the rules. "Launch all fighters," Susan ordered, "and signal the ground teams. It's time." Down on the surface of Kalari Prime, Sergeant First Class Tony Mitchell crouched, behind a pile of rubble that had once been someone's home. Around him, his squad of 20 Marines waited in silence. They had been on the planet for 6 hours, moving through the ruins of the capital city while Vorthak ground forces searched for survivors to kill. The aliens had not expected human soldiers to land on the planet. Why would they? The battle was in space, not on the ground. But humans had learned that sometimes the best way to win a space battle was to attack the enemy where they felt safest. "Mitchell to all teams," he whispered into his radio. "Target confirmed. 3 Vorthak communication, centers, 2 command posts, and 1 major ammunition depot. Remember, we're not here to win a ground war. We're here to cause chaos and confusion. Hit hard, move fast, and make them think there are more of us than there really are." The Marines spread out through the ruined city, moving like ghosts through streets filled with debris and smoke. Each team had a specific target, and each target was chosen to maximum confusion among the enemy forces. The first explosion lit up the night sky as Tony's team destroyed a Vorthak communication array. Without communications, the enemy ground forces could not coordinate with their ships in orbit. The second explosion took out a command bunker, leaving an entire battalion of Vorthak warriors without orders. The third explosion destroyed enough ammunition to supply an army. But the real genius of the human plan was not the damage they caused. It was the fear they created. Suddenly, Vorthak forces throughout the city were reporting human soldiers everywhere. The reports were impossible. Humans appearing and disappearing, striking from all directions at once, somehow knowing exactly where to attack for maximum effect. War Chief Krex received the reports from his ground commanders with growing alarm. Human soldiers were on the planet, attacking his forces with tactics he had never seen before. They did not fight in formation or try to hold territory. They simply struck and vanished, leaving his warriors spinning in circles and shooting at shadows. "How many humans are on the surface?" he demanded. "Unknown, War Chief. Reports range from 50 to 5,000. They seem to be everywhere at once." Krex felt something cold settle in his stomach. He was fighting an enemy that refused to follow any of the rules of warfare he understood. Space battles were supposed to be between fleets. Ground battles were supposed to be between armies. But these humans were fighting both battles at the same time, and somehow winning both. Above the planet, Admiral Carter watched as the Vorthak fleet finally reached attack range. 67 enemy ships were closing on her 12 vessels, weapons powered and ready for a final confrontation. It should have been the end of the human fleet. Instead, it was the beginning of the end for the Vorthak. "All ships," she ordered, "execute the Washington maneuver." Jake Morrison felt his heart skip a beat. The Washington maneuver was named after an ancient Earth general who had won an impossible battle by doing something completely unexpected. It was dangerous, desperate, and had never been tried in space combat. It was also their only chance. "You heard the Admiral," he told his crew. "Take us in. Full speed, all weapons firing. We're going straight through their formation." The 12 human ships suddenly accelerated directly toward the Vorthak fleet. Instead of trying to outmaneuver the enemy, they were charging straight into the teeth of their weapons. It was either the bravest thing anyone had ever seen, or the most foolish. The Vorthak opened fire with everything they had, space-filled, with energy beams, missiles, and plasma bolts as 67 warships tried to destroy 12 much smaller targets. But the humans did not slow down or try to dodge. They flew straight through the enemy formation, their own weapons blazing. In 30 seconds, it was over. The human fleet emerged from the other side of the Vorthak formation, damaged but intact. Behind them, enemy ships spun in confusion, many of them badly damaged by weapons fire from their own allies. War Chief Krex stared at his tactical display in shock. Half his fleet was damaged or destroyed not by human weapons but by their own crossfire. In trying to hit the fast-moving human ships, his vessels had ended up shooting each other. "Impossible," he whispered. But Admiral Carter was not finished. "All ships," she ordered, "turn around and do it again." War Chief Krex Vorthul watched in horror as the human ships turned around for another attack run. His fleet was in chaos. Ships were colliding with each other as they tried to reform their battle lines. Communications were breaking down as damaged. Vessels lost contact with the command structure. And somehow, impossibly, the humans were still coming. War Chief, his tactical officer, reported, "We have lost 31 ships. Another 15 are too damaged to fight effectively. The humans have lost only 2 vessels." Krex felt something he had never experienced before in his long career as a warrior. Fear. Not fear of death, which was honorable, but fear of defeat at the hands of an enemy that should have been easy to crush. These humans fought like demons, appearing and disappearing at will, striking where he was weakest and vanishing before he could respond. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving transmission from the surface. General Torx reports that human ground forces have destroyed 6 more supply depots and captured our main landing field. He is requesting immediate reinforcement." Krex closed his eyes. The humans had somehow managed to coordinate a space battle and a ground assault at the same time. While his fleet was busy trying to destroy their ships, human soldiers were tearing apart his ground forces. It was a level of tactical coordination that he had never seen before. "War Chief," another voice called urgently, "the human ships are coming around for another pass. They will be in weapons range in 30 seconds. Krex opened his eyes and looked at his tactical display. 12 human ships were accelerating toward his scattered fleet, their weapons already beginning to glow with charging energy. His own ships were trying to form a defensive line, but they were still confused and disorganized from the first attack. For the first time in his life, War Chief Krex Vorthul considered retreat. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the UES Valkyrie, watching as her fleet prepared for the second attack run. The first pass had worked even better than she had hoped. The Vorthak fleet was scattered and demoralized, exactly what she needed for the final phase of her plan. "All ships," she announced over the communication channel, "this is our last chance to end this battle quickly. I want concentrated fire on their command ship. If we can take out their leadership, the rest of their fleet will break." Jake Morrison acknowledged the order and targeted his weapons on the massive Vorthak flagship. The ship was twice the size of any human vessel, covered in thick armor and bristling with weapons. But it was also damaged from the first attack and surrounded by the wreckage of destroyed Allied ships. "Take us in," he ordered his crew. The human fleet dove toward the Vorthak formation like hawks attacking a flock of prey birds. This time, the enemy was ready for them. Defensive fire filled space as the aliens tried to stop the charging human ships. Energy beams and missile trails created a deadly web that should have destroyed anything trying to pass through it. But the humans had learned something important during their first attack. The Vorthak were too used to fighting enemies who stood still and traded fire like gentlemen. They were not prepared for opponents who moved like lightning and struck like thunder. The UES Thunderstrike rolled and spun through the enemy fire, its pilot using every trick he had learned in a lifetime of flying dangerous missions. Missiles exploded around the ship as Jake's crew returned fire, their weapons targeting the Vorthak flagship's bridge and engine sections. "Direct hit on their command tower," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. "I'm reading massive internal explosions." Around them, the other human ships were doing the same thing, focusing all their firepower on the enemy flagship while using speed and maneuverability to avoid the defensive fire. It was like watching a pack of wolves bring down a massive bear. Individually, each wolf was weaker than their prey, but together, They were unstoppable. War Chief Krex felt his flagship shudder as human weapons tore through its armor. Explosions echoed through the corridors as critical systems failed one after another. His beautiful warship, the pride of the Vorthak Third Fleet, was dying around him. "War Chief," his second-in-command called out. "The bridge is compromised. We need to evacuate to the secondary command center." But Krex knew it was too late. The humans had targeted his ship specifically, and they had succeeded in crippling it. Without his flagship to coordinate the fleet, his remaining ships would be picked off one by an enemy that refused to fight fair. For a moment, he considered going down with his ship. It would be an honorable death, and it would maintain his reputation as a warrior who never surrendered. But then he thought about his crew, good Vorthak soldiers who would die because of his pride. "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "All ships are to withdraw immediately. We are abandoning the Kalari system." His second-in-command stared at him in shock. "War Chief, we cannot retreat. The Empire will consider it cowardice." Krex looked around his damaged bridge, listening to the sounds of his dying ship. Better to be called a coward than to sacrifice good warriors for a battle that cannot be won. These humans, they are not like other species. They fight with a purpose we cannot understand. Captain Zara Velton watched from her damaged ship as the Vorthak fleet began to withdraw from Kalari space. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. 3 days ago, her people had been facing complete extinction. Now their enemies were running away like frightened children. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the human admiral." Admiral Carter's face appeared on the screen, and Zara was surprised to see that the human looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had just finished a difficult but necessary job. "Captain Velton," Admiral Carter said, "this is Admiral Carter. The Vorthak fleet is withdrawing from your system. Your people are safe." Zara felt tears running down her face. "Admiral Carter, we cannot possibly thank you enough. You saved our entire civilization." "You don't need to thank us," Admiral Carter replied. "You called for help and we answered. That's what civilized people do for each other." Over the next several hours, the human fleet helped coordinate the rescue of Kalari survivors from the planet's surface. Human medical teams worked alongside Kalari doctors to treat the wounded. Human engineers helped repair damaged Kalari ships and space stations. Human soldiers shared their rations with hungry refugees. Jake Morrison stood on the surface of Kalari Prime, looking up at the stars where the Vorthak fleet had disappeared. Around him, Kalari families were being reunited with loved ones they thought they would never see again. Children laughed and played in the ruins of their city, already beginning to rebuild what had been destroyed. "Sir," Sergeant Tony Mitchell approached and saluted. "The last of the Vorthak ground forces have surrendered. The planet is secure." Jake nodded. "Good work, Sergeant. Get your people some rest. We've got a long trip home ahead of us." But even as he said it, Jake knew that home would never look quite the same again. News of the battle at Kalari Prime was already spreading across the galaxy. Other species were sending messages to Earth, asking for protection from their own enemies. Humanity had become something they had never intended to be, the galaxy's protectors. Admiral Carter stood on her bridge, reading the latest intelligence reports. 12 different species had formally requested human military assistance. The Galactic Council was debating whether to offer humanity a permanent seat at their governing body. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight. "Admiral," her communications officer called out, "we are receiving another distress call. A species called the Fenari are under attack by raiders in the Outer Rim." Admiral Carter looked out at the stars, thinking about the choice that lay before her people. They could return to Earth and go back to their quiet lives on the edge of the galaxy, or they could accept their new role as defenders of the innocent. "Signal Earth Command," she said finally. "Tell them we need more ships. And tell them to start recruiting more volunteers. We're going to be very busy." The storm had passed through Kalari space, but it was far from over. Across the galaxy, there were others who needed help. And when they called, humanity would answer. They always did.